Hello and welcome to episode 37 of Generations Apart. I'm Robbie.
And I'm Jay.
And on today's episode, we're talking about all that was announced at Meta's jam-packed Connect event, including some exciting new hardware and their latest developments in AI. So let's get straight into it. So the 27th of September was the Meta Connect event where they were announcing their new latest hardware and their AI talks as well. First of all, I just wanted to dive into the presentation itself just before getting to any of the content that they talked about. It was an in-person event and a really good in-person event, I'd say. Out of some of the events that we've seen recently, so the Samsung one that we recently reviewed, which was heavily scripted and quite awkward because it was scripted. This one felt really quite natural, and it was open air, it was outside, there was people whooping and chanting as they were announcing things, and it felt like, you know, events of times gone by. And I miss these kind of events. I think it was great.
For me, it felt like E3, which is what I always, that's the kind of reaction I'm used to with E3 events where they pop a big title and everyone goes, woo, you know, a great new game. I did like that. I made that note. I put nice to see a live event for a change, and I know we saw the Samsung one, but we did say on that episode that it felt a little awkward, a little wooden, especially with those horrible plants in the audience. This time, it was much more realistic, much more genuine, and there were some really good presenters as well.
Great presenters, including Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah. You know, I was actually...
it was about the most
really
human
impressed.
I think I've ever seen Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah,
literally what I wrote in my notes as well.
Although there was one early on, there was one bit that he did when I was like, this is a bit weird. He went on about, there was a very weird focus on holograms. I don't know if this bit resonated for you or this.
Oh no, I must have missed that one.
Go back and watch the start again. He talks about holograms and us living in a world where we talk to each other and we're all holograms, and your friends appear and they're holograms. And he said the word so many times. I was like, first of all, it's quite a weird concept. Like, I'm not saying he's wrong, and that I'm not saying I wouldn't find a hologram cool, by the way.
Yeah, true.
But it just laboured the point a little bit too hard, and I thought, even the crowd weren't really getting into it. And then at one point he said, and then there's AIs, and they'll be embodied by holograms. And I was like, oh my God, that's a word again.
Yeah, when he said that freaked me out, because I was like, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah. It just seemed to go on a little bit. So there was this one, it was just very short at the beginning. He was getting all into his vision for the future and us being outdoors, and then the mixed reality, and then it was holograms, and I just thought, wow, that is the sort of stuff that you wouldn't see at an Apple event. And I know we're gonna bash Apple a little bit in today's episode, and probably rightly so. But I just thought that was the sort of thing that they would never say, because it's too out there for their audience. Yeah. But I thought it was very interesting that they leaned into it here.
Well, every time he kept saying that, I was thinking, have you seen the Kingsman film? You know, have you seen the Kingsman films?
The first one. Well, and the second one, yes.
You know, when they sit around the kind of boardroom table and then they put their glasses on and then they see all the people from all the different countries and stuff. Yeah, that's what I was picturing, which is basically, I guess, what he was envisioning as well. But it's a bit weird.
Which I think it's, you know, when you got to do it for work, it's a bit like Teams, isn't it? It makes perfect sense. Just the way it was described. It wasn't like I disagreed with any of the ideas. It just felt a little bit weird. Just kept saying the word holograms, and it just... to the point of it being a little less scripted, it did feel a little awkward at times. There were a couple of moments where you could see that he got his words wrong or he got the flow wrong, which I much prefer to see than something that's heavily robotic in delivery. Yeah, I preferred that. But it did make me laugh, because and it must have been, like I said, it's been a few days since I watched it, but it must have been weird because I wrote it down. Yeah, I only wrote the right things down like that.
I think overall, though,
why has he said that so many times?
Overall, though, he was super kind of. It sounds, and the reason we're saying obviously he's super human, I guess, and relatable is because historically he's been quite robotic and emotionless, I would say. But I really genuinely feel like it was like a relatable person on the stage chatting about how excited he was, and he genuinely looked excited as well. About all the stuff he was. And it wasn't heavily curated, as you say. Like, there was ums and ers and all sorts of trip-ups in there, which I actually love that when I see live speaking, because then it just sounds like he's having a talk with people rather than, you know, just heavily scripted or just this robotic communication. So I actually...
It's authentic. It felt more authentic, I thought.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, he did a spiel about the vision of the company, and I actually wrote a quote. I think the main thing that he was talking about, which was connecting people wherever they may be in the world, and that seems to be the vision of the company. But also, I think the whole theme of the event for me spoke to bringing technology, bringing AI to the masses, and actually, it felt like the whole thing was like a bit of a subtle dig at the really expensive companies that are developing stuff, because there's lots of winks and
you
and things
felt
like
it
that.
was subtle.
Well, maybe not.
There were some very unsubtle digs at
Apple.
Yeah, let's be honest. Let's name it Apple. Yeah, I mean, I've got the very first one about 3 or 4 lines down in my notes.
Yeah,
and I wrote the words "subtle dig at Apple," and I didn't bother writing it every time I heard it after that because it just kept coming
all the time. But it wasn't just the hardware though, because there was also the AI stuff. And I don't necessarily think it was a dig at anybody in particular in the industry, but they did seem to have an emphasis on not just bringing the MetaQuest 3, which we'll talk about in a second, the headset to the masses because it's much more affordable, but also the AI itself, bringing it to tools that everybody already uses anyway. So it was bringing technology to the masses, whereas I suppose the industry, there's a lot of hype around AI at the moment, but it hasn't really impacted people's day-to-day lives yet. And I think that's, again, the theme that was coming throughout, is that they want to impact people's day-to-day lives, the average Joes.
I suppose as it stands at the moment, with maybe the exception of Bing Chat, you've got to go to the Tech Avenue, you've got to go and find it. You've got to go to ChatGPT specifically to interact with that tech, whereas, as you say, their plan, and we'll talk about it in more depth, I guess, is to bring it to the platforms you're already using.
Yeah.
In weird ways. Come to that. There's some very weird ways, but I like it.
Yeah.
So and he kind of broke it down, didn't he? There's 3 core sections to the presentation, and that carried over then into the post Mark Zuckerberg bit, where the different sort of senior members of the Meta organization came out and took those presentations to a deeper level. He talked about mixed reality, fundamentally the Quest 3, AI, and then smart glasses.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover those, I guess, in that order.
Yeah, we'll crack on with that order, and I guess you touched on another point as well, which was quite good about the presentation. There's just the diversity of people who came out and presented. Admittedly, Mark took a lot of the points early, so it ended up being a little
stole all of their thunder, didn't he? He said all the good stuff, and then went, and these guys will fill you in on the details.
Dropped the mic and then left.
Yeah.
So I did
I guess that's what you expect, isn't it? Yes. And then what we didn't see in the keynote is that over the course of the 2-day event, I'm sure those individuals and their teams then took those developers and those present into another level of detail.
Yes.
But yeah, from a presentation point of view, it was the Mark show for 30 minutes, and then over to the squad to come out and talk in a bit more detail about everything he just said.
Yeah. It was nice that they were there, though, because I do think there's obviously been a lot of work that's gone into this event, and the kind of products and features that have been developed as part of the announcements as well. So it's nice to have like the heads of these teams come out and talk about how excited they are as well. And some of them were very excited. Which
the VP of Smart Glasses was specifically stood out. I thought she was brilliant.
She was fantastic.
She really cracked me up in a brilliant way. I thought, what a great presenter. Yeah,
absolutely.
If she didn't get a massive pat on the back as she walked off the stage for that, I don't know.
Yeah,
there's something wrong with the world, because that was great.
It was
very memorable, but funny, but in funny reasons, but in good ways too.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Quest 3 then. So it was already, I suppose, announced earlier this year that it was coming. So it wasn't, I suppose, a surprise as part of the event, the Quest 3. And we even talked about some speculative specs that might come with this as well, I think, earlier in the year. Especially based on the Quest Pro, which was also announced. Oh, remind me when that was. Was that February?
That was October last year. This was the same. So the Quest Pro was announced at the same event last year and released in the same month.
Wow.
So the Quest Pro at this point is a year old. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because the very first thing that I've written here, and this was one of the opening lines that they mentioned about the Quest 3, they said it's their first mainstream mixed reality headset. So Quest 2 was VR only. The Quest Pro was mixed reality, but by its title and its price,
very expensive.
Not mainstream. They then said it's the most powerful headset ever shipped.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, so does that mean it's more powerful than the Pro? Because if it is, and I literally wrote this, that's dead, I guess.
Yeah.
Because the Pro didn't get a look in all event.
Nope.
If you bought a Pro last year, I I've got a Pro. I didn't pay for it, but I've got one. Does that mean that your investment is basically dead? That they're done with it? Because that was the rumor earlier in the year already.
Yeah.
They dismissed it, but they didn't announce any upgrades. There's no Pro 2. There was no talk of even intention to bring out a Pro 2. And the Quest 3 has got everything that the Pro had for a third of the price.
Yep.
Which, so like, well...
And better in some cases.
If you had spent your... Well, I'm better, yeah. If you'd spent your own money on the Pro last year, you'd be gutted. Absolutely gutted.
I think even for the professional use cases, because they've introduced lots of business tools that are now kind of applicable to the Quest 3. And the part that I mentioned that is better than the Quest Pro as well is the pass-through apparently has 30% higher pixel count.
Yeah.
So even the pass-through is better, which it was the best that they'd ever done on the Quest Pro, but now a cheaper headset is better than that for the pass-through.
And it's not like it's slightly cheaper. It's a third of the price.
Well, not anymore.
The Quest Pro went out at $1,500 and then fairly swiftly dropped to $1,200, I think, in most regions within 3 months. And now this is $499 at the base level. So you're talking a third of the original RRP, and still more than half of the current sale price of the Pro. I mean, that headset is dead.
Yeah. I mean,
absolutely
if you look at the history of the headsets that they've released, the Pro is the anomaly. They've never focused on the high-end VR or business-related space for this stuff.
It was only this time last year that they did. I mean, this device is a year old.
Mm.
They were selling this as the device, and then they went, actually, we can make it. Well, so my question is, could they have made that Pro cheaper all along? Because they did knock the price down significantly very quickly.
Yes.
Or have they just found cheaper ways to manufacture the same tech? Because like you said, it's got everything the Pro's got and a little bit more. Even the controllers are inspired by the Pro.
Have cameras
I don't know if they're not exactly the same.
Yeah.
But they're inspired by that. So, even that.
Yeah, and interestingly,
very strange.
You can buy those controllers separately and they're compatible with the Quest 3. But before we get into the critical kind of side of it, should we talk about some of the specs first that I've written down? So I've got that they talked about 10 times more pixels for pass-through than the Quest 2 and 30% better than the Quest Pro. So the pass-through, at least the pixel density, the resolution that comes through is incredibly high, and it's color, and it's supposed to be color graded even better than the Quest Pro as well. So the pass-through, and they really had a big emphasis on the mixed reality as part of this headset. So it's clear that they really want you to be aware of your surroundings when you're wearing it. And basically,
I was going to say, before we get into the details any further, that for me was the interesting thing with the tone here. So last year, the Quest Pro had mixed reality capability, but the main focus was still virtual reality.
Mm.
And even the event last year, when you attended it in VR, you were in Horizon Worlds, you had an auditorium that transformed. The whole thing was effectively a video package, which actually, when you were in VR, reacted dynamic way. I don't know what the VR experience was like this year. You could have attended it in VR. I didn't bother, just because I ended up watching it after the fact. I couldn't watch it live. But watching the main event, I can't imagine, other than some sort of unnecessary fancy animations, that there'd have been much difference being in the VR versus just watching it on a screen.
Mm.
And as you said, the focus was very much on mixed reality.
Yeah.
And they did, surprisingly, later in the presentation, use the word spatial computing, which obviously has been sort of pushed by Apple. It wasn't mentioned by Zuckerberg. It was Boz that said that later on.
With a wink. So if you caught the wink when he said it.
Yeah, and I've got a quote as well, which I did write that down. But the first dig, actually, that came Apple's way, and it wasn't just Apple, this was kind of digging out, it was all providers, because they also had a little dig at the PSVR 2 as well. They mentioned that this was standalone, no wires, no battery pack. Little dig at Apple.
Yes, and they said that in reference to that as well, they said no battery packs that will take you out of the, I think, present moment or the experience or immersion.
Yeah. Well, and again, I have no problem with that. Like, I get it. If you know that, I think, despite the fact that I would say that the Vision Pro presentation did nothing to sort of throw rocks at Meta, it's an obvious threat to their business, and they've looked at the things that they think makes their proposition better, and they've leaned into it. I always think when corporations have a bit subtle digs at each other, and it's for the developers, it's for the fanboys, isn't it? Really, that so they can sit there and go, I'm a Meta fanboy, and look what they just said about Apple. Or if it's PlayStation versus Xbox, it's the same thing, isn't it? For me, I always just feels a little bit near. I'm not. I mean, even though I'm an Apple fanboy, I'm not. I just don't think if Apple did the same, I'd be saying the same thing. Apple was sort of throwing those rocks. I'd be like, come on, really, grown-ups?
Yeah, I don't know whether it was that critical, to be honest. I think that's something that...
There were a few, though. It was persistent.
I mean, they did do it a couple of times, to be fair. It was definitely intentional, but I don't think it was, that critical that it would constitute some kind of catfight between them or anything.
No, I just think it's unnecessary. Like, I think these things, you can decide for these things for yourself. You don't necessarily tell you.
Yeah.
When they're sort of labeling it, it just felt a little bit scary. But
anyway. My question around that, though, is, they're talking about no wires, no cables, was about the battery life. And then I had to Google it afterwards because I don't think they mentioned it on the stage. But it's the same as the Quest 2, so 2 hours I think is the expected time that you'll be playing on it. So ups and downs. I mean, I
can't remember Apple Vision. It's no different. Apple Vision Pro is similar, I think.
Yeah,
that's
with
the battery pack. Yeah. But I suppose the difference here is you've got the ability to change it. But then we don't know what that does to the experience, so that just knocks the experience off.
Yeah, just turn it off.
Inbuilt power. Yeah. And to be honest, they do that to keep the price down. So let's be also super clear. Quest 2, and I've purchased these for headsets in the past, has a Pro strap, quotes, which has a battery built into it at the back, much like the Pro headset has that arrangement. So you can double that battery life with an upgraded strap, which actually gives you, instead of the elastic, which is frankly not that great, it's the proper halo that we've kind of gotten used to and found more comfortable on the PlayStation. So there is an alternative. And they do sell those add-ons so that you can take your more affordable device and kind of pimp it out. Yeah. Which I think actually is a smarter move in some ways because it gives you the consumer choice. I want the out-of-the-box. I'll have the out-of-the-box if I want to pimp it up because I want to use it for 4 hours and, I'm going to be a big, heavy user. I have that power as well.
Yeah. Also, in theory, you could just have a battery bank just in your pocket that is sufficient enough output to charge it as well while you're playing.
Basically just making the Vision Pro, aren't you?
I know, but then you have the option. They told you not to. You have the option. It runs without it, whereas the Vision Pro doesn't.
Yeah, they sell the Pro straps made by Meta, but there's also loads of third parties that sell headsets with cradles that you put your own back. So there's lots of choices. And I have to say, the Pro head strap's pretty good. Having used it before, and the extra battery life, it's really good. It's all seamless in terms of how the device represents it. It's all integrated. It's very clever. So yeah, even though it's only 2 hours of battery life, there's loads of accessories that are going to help you extend that should you need.
Yes, yeah, and in this year it looks like that they've got a lot more kind of customization, even with like the colors and the faceplates and all of that as well. So I think they've got the silicon and the material ones. They've got different colors for all of them. I think it was blue, orange, and white. I can't remember if I saw any of the other ones.
I didn't spot any other colors. The other thing as well, and I don't know if you caught this, I didn't actually catch mention of this, maybe you saw it in the stats you looked up afterwards. Are the hand controllers battery powered as they were on the 1 and the 2?
Yeah.
Or are they rechargeable batteries that are built
single AA battery?
So they're still single, which I think it's not great from an environmental perspective, but from a sort of consistent play thing, that they were very good. That they lasted a long time, to be fair to them. They the ones I've done, the 2. And also, if you're in the situation where all of a sudden they drain and you're in the middle of a game or you're in the middle of a work setup, you can just pop new batteries in and carry on going.
Yeah.
At you. And of course, you've got the improved hand gestures and all that stuff as well.
And as you say, you can pimp it out if you want, buy the Pro controllers if you really wanted to, the rechargeable, and you get the added benefits of the cameras on them, so you don't have to have them in sight of the the front of the actual device itself. So I guess touching on some of the other specs, they mentioned they've got a new Snapdragon custom chip in there, the XR2 Gen 2, which really rolls off the tongue.
Such catchy names, aren't they? Which has 2 times graphics performance, I think I noted.
2 times GPU, yeah.
Impressive.
They've got.
Although I will say, the handful of gameplay demos they did.
Yeah, again,
they look better, but they still look a bit,
They did the side-by-side comparisons, and I was like...
They look better, but they weren't... You didn't look at the new ones and go... Yeah, exactly. You didn't look at it and go, that's amazing.
Yeah.
I looked at it and went, that's still not as good as a PSVR 2 or PC gaming, which of course it's not going to be.
It's not going to be.
But again, if you're going to sort of start lauding graphical performance and then show that.
Well.
But I guess that's not a massive problem from a graphics perspective when you then consider the other announcement they made, which was the first of their Microsoft tie-ins, which was the xCloud gaming coming to Quest.
Oh, God, yeah, that's an awesome thing.
That's impressive. And actually, then you don't need graphical performance because you're just streaming that game into your headset and you can play that on a massive screen.
Yes.
That I thought was really interesting. And I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the podcast before, but I've had a number of discussions over the years about will Xbox get into the VR game or not. And I know this isn't the VR game. This is mixed reality. You just play xCloud on a virtual screen,
which they're already in. Microsoft are already in there with the HoloLens, aren't they? Not really,
but their HoloLens isn't really a commercial product, isn't it? The way this is, and it's more aimed at businesses, I think. But this is the first time that xCloud been in VR, I think.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's a really great time. I don't think you'll see it anywhere else for a while. I don't think that will be something that just natively appears on Apple.
No.
Because this is, I've got to imagine, part of the deal they've done with Microsoft to bring a number of Microsoft technologies to their platform. Yeah, well, if you look at, I mean, we'll come on to it later, but when they talked about the business tools, there's a whole load of Microsoft stuff in there, isn't there, around M365?
Yeah.
So,
but, I've seen that before where, Microsoft are on every platform. There's no doubt about that. But they have partnerships with also like a lot of people. Like I remember they had some strategic partnerships with Samsung years ago for similar things where they had the business tools on there and then they had an xCloud native feature that was slightly different to other phones. But then, it's also on other devices and I've seen kind of similar partnerships with other major mobile phone manufacturers as well. So I don't know whether Microsoft is really that picky. I'd be surprised.
I mean, there's no way you're not going to have M365 tools on Apple.
True.
There's no way.
Well, yeah.
You're 100%. In the same way you get them on your iPad now. xCloud? Maybe.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, that's more of an issue with the App Store. It's not a seamless
experience on iPad, is it, at the moment? Yeah, I was going to say that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, which I think is, it's not they don't want to put it on iOS. It's they don't like the 30% fees that iOS charge.
Yeah, but and Apple don't want you buying subscription services outside of their platform. So
no.
Anyway,
but yeah, they've also got the new pancake lenses, which makes the device thinner. And actually, it's the same pancake lenses that are on the Quest Pro as well, which is it's just another thing that's brought from the Quest Pro to this device. But I saw, so it's 40% thinner. I wrote down, but it's actually weirdly heavier than the Quest 2. Is what I said when I read online. Yeah, I think 3 grams, not by much. Slightly heavier, but you would have thought with it being thinner that it would have been a bit lighter. But
if that is the case, that is going to make that Pro Strap essential because if you want to play this for long periods of time, the way that they strap those elasticated straps to your face and basically put all of the weight on the front of your head, I don't care who you are, unless you're some sort of wrestler and you've got a neck like, God knows what, it does make your head tired. It makes your neck tired. Makes your shoulders a little bit tired. It is going to fatigue you, so you are going to need something that distributes that weight more easily. But again, if you're used to Quest 2 and you're playing in that all the time, then probably not a new thing.
Yeah, you've built up the neck muscles now.
yeah. I also noticed, and I don't think this was kind of something they mentioned, and it was kind of in line with the technology enhancements. They mentioned augments, however you want to say it, which were these persistently anchored digital artifacts in physical space.
I love that.
Which I thought was really clever, because they also mentioned a bit later on, although I thought the two things should have gone together, the fact that you now no longer need to do room scale boundaries.
Yeah.
Now it just reads your room and detects the safe play space. But as part of that, you can then anchor things like pictures, images on the wall, windows into other dimensions. I think they showed the Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Game
just like posters
in
that look
reality
3D as well, and you can just stick your head in this poster and you can see deep into a forest or something.
I think that was really clever, and just something that they mentioned was made possible by all the new tech that they were cramming into it.
And the fact that it remembers as well, so you set it up once, you start hanging stuff around your house, and no matter where you put it on in that house again, it'll always remember where those objects are, those 3D objects in the house, which is quite cool. And I think that was always the intention for the mixed reality stuff, is that you would have some stuff in normal reality where you might have some pictures and stuff around the house, but you'd have some digital stuff in the mixed reality space as well, which is also hung around the house. I think that's quite cool.
If that sort of digital anchoring is something that you can then take into the real world, and then that's kind of also been the dream for things like NFTs and stuff, hasn't it? For
just
a while,
what I was thinking,
the idea of having like unique digital artifacts around a city or around your house. that anyone with the right technology can see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was quite interesting and maybe a step towards that direction. And I must admit, there's a lot in here about mixed reality. They didn't lean too heavily into VR. They mentioned it was as good as ever, and they showed some good games. But I do think the mixed reality stuff is where this is interesting, and I think they've recognised that from what got people interested about the Vision Pro headset, which was a very much more about mixed reality than virtual reality.
Yeah.
And you can see they've pivoted their messaging a little bit. They've changed their approach with their messaging, the Quest and virtual reality, I think,
heavily
more towards mixed.
Heavily influenced by Apple. And I actually, there was an image that was brought up on screen. Let me see if I can load it up to show you. I did take a screenshot of it because it was so striking because it reminded me so much of what was shown at the Apple event. For those who are watching on YouTube, I'll bring it up now. And they were talking about some of the entertainment things that you can get in there. So they've had this for a while where you can sit like courtside and you're like in the event of like say an NBA game. But they've now got, giant screens that you can render in your living room and watch multiple different games, basketball games at the same time. But there was this one shot where it showed someone sat on the couch watching these games, one massive screen and then all the multi-screens. And I was just thinking, this looks almost identical to how Apple pitched some of their spatial computing and spatial entertainment stuff that they were pushing for the Apple Vision Pro. And this, you can see, is again pushing on that we can do the same thing, but a sixth of the price.
and I think this is where it's going to be interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of the feedback with the Vision Pro headset when it came to the pass-through was just how good the screens were.
Yeah.
And there's probably a large amount of that is because they cost a small fortune.
Yeah.
How good will it be in a device that is as affordable as the Quest 3? I can be honest and say, having experienced the Pro, it's not great. But they said 30% better than the Pro. So is that now good enough that pass-through is not such a jarring feeling when you're trying to kind of look at the world around you and the stuff that's been layered on top? Interesting on that picture as well. I don't know if you noticed, I'd not picked up on it. The woman who's wearing the headset has got like a cross straps in like an X pattern that go from corner to corner. That's different. That's not how those straps have shipped in the past.
Yeah.
So normally in the past it's been one right on the top that goes right to the back, then the strap that goes around. So I wonder if these straps distribute the weight more comfortably across your headset.
For context, I can bring that up as well.
The video there is one straight over the top look.
Yeah.
So is the video is the other picture that you showed different? Because that's how they've typically shipped. The other picture had a cross strap.
Yeah, maybe maybe the person sat on the couch has got the Pro strap or some other kind of strap that comes as an accessory.
It's certainly something different, isn't it? Anyway.
Yeah.
They then sort of they touched on a few games, which I think, to be honest, probably not worth dwelling on here. Assassin's Creed Nexus isn't new. Looked okay. Wasn't graphically massively appealing. I think if there's a PC VR version or a PSVR 2 version that may eventually come, I think I'd rather wait and play that. Roblox, we already knew was coming to VR, and that launched the same day. And they also mentioned a bunch of enhancements to Horizon Worlds, including legs. And some new game modes, which I think Horizon Worlds continues to get better and better. There's some really popular experiences in there now, and there's some fun stuff in there, but it's a growing community. But then they pivoted, didn't they? So they moved away from VR and gaming, and they got really stuck into some of the business stuff.
Well, just before that, I don't know if you caught the Easter egg when he was talking about another live sporting thing that there's on there, the X Stadium app, where you can also witness kind of fighting matches, cage matches, boxing matches, that kind of thing. And he was making a few jokes about how, it's as good as it can get without actually being in the cage yourself.
In the cage. He
was like, that's a lot of fun. And he was, I guess, hinting at his upcoming fight with Elon Musk, I guess.
Which is not going to happen. I just can't say it. I mean, if it does, we should absolutely do a reaction video and watch that thing live, but 100%. I can't see it. So business tools, this wasn't new because they did mention some of this last year, but they touched on it in a bit more detail. And funny enough, it was mentioned for the Pro headset, but it's never actually come out. So in the year since it's been mentioned, this stuff has not actually been made live or usable. But it's fine. They didn't put a date on it last year. They just said it was going to come. But you released your Pro headset and then did software to support it for a year. So this is the corporate software. It's enterprise grade stuff. It's device management, user management, all the
Yes.
stuff that IT professionals are more than used to when it comes to mobile device management, but for a VR headset. That's coming. They mentioned M365 coming to Quest by the end of the year, giving you all the good stuff, your Word, your Excels, and all that kind of jazz. But again, kind of just pushing the multiple use cases, I suppose, for this headset and its mixed reality capabilities. So I can't imagine anyone going into an immersive world to work on their spreadsheet.
Well,
they're going to want to do that in mixed reality, I think, rather than.
Yes, definitely, and they must be banking on that as a reality. If they're supporting so much of the device management, the central device management for enterprise wide, they must be banking on the fact that companies might start buying these in bulk and distributing to their employees for specific use cases, I guess. But
this, like I said, they announced that last year. None of that was new. All of that was mentioned last year as part of their partnership with Microsoft when the Pro headset was announced. So they've just, they've given us a bit more clarity on the timeline, but none of that concept was new. Of course, we already had VR Workroom, which was kind of meant to be your new meeting space for work. They didn't mention that in this event, but to be honest, if they have enhanced that, it probably doesn't warrant.
They mentioned something
in a keynote.
Something Teams related for that, didn't they?
There was some Teams stuff, I think, to do with your avatar, wasn't there?
There's a Teams. I wrote it down somewhere. Microsoft Mesh for Teams, and I think they flashed up a bit of an image for it, and it looked like a kind of virtual meeting room that you would sit around. So maybe instead of pushing,
it makes more sense to bake it into the tools that companies are already using rather than trying to push them to a new meeting platform.
Yeah, exactly.
And to be honest, the VR Workrooms are really good. I've messed around with them a few times. And it is quite immersive when you're in there, but it is not a seamless experience to get into.
No. I think I've tried it with you at some point.
It is difficult. Beyond that, I didn't make a huge amount of notes other than they mentioned the precision controllers, which we've touched on already. They said it was going to ship August 10th, which I thought was quite funny because it was an obvious slip of the tongue. He meant October 10th.
Yeah.
That's what came up on the slides. I did scrub back to see if that was in fact what he said, and he did say August 10th.
I didn't even notice. And I wrote down August 10th, not even thinking that
we were past it. Yeah, he actually meant October 10th, and the slides that came afterwards said as much, and he mentioned the price being $499.
Yeah, and I think I looked in the UK, it's $4,799.
Right. And the only thing that I took away from kind of what came afterwards when they had multiple presentations was the one quote I mentioned you before we started recording, which I'll mention now, which was from Boz. And the biggest dig at Apple, which was best value spatial computing headset on the market. And they touched on, then he kind of expanded on that by talking about making these devices affordable for everyone and bringing this tech to everyone, not just the rich and the elite, which was a huge dig at obviously Apple's very hefty price that the Vision Pro is going to carry. And I do wonder, now that they've crammed so much of this tech into the Quest 3, if it's good, done well, does that put some pressure on Apple from a pricing point of view, or will they stand firm and keep it at $3,500? Because it's a much harder pill to swallow if there's a competing device out there. At the time the Vision Pro launched, there really wasn't.
Yeah.
This is saying it can do much of the same. How different will those experiences be when the other device launched?
It's got to put on some pressure for sure, because it's not going to be 6 times better. I'd be surprised if, the Meta Quest 3 is like 80% of the way there of what the Apple Vision Pro is, and people will absolutely, pay $4,799 the majority of the time over the $3,500 that Apple are asking for, 20% extra performance or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of it comes down to software, doesn't it? And I think Apple probably arguably do better software, but
probably, yeah.
That much better? Maybe not. And it's about what the experiences are, aren't there? I guess if you think about the number of people who use WhatsApp, and Facebook in general, Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
They've got some products there that if they make this headset and some of the other stuff we'll talk about in a minute work well, they could really drive some growth in that user base.
Yeah, that was the
Vision
other thing I got from the. Sorry,
no, I was going to say the Vision Pro, though, just remember, has got a good bump in hardware over this, though. Even things like, I don't necessarily think it's particularly useful. The outside curved screen is adding some significant price to your Vision Pro headset, which this doesn't have, questionably need. You also don't get any controllers with the Vision Pro.
That's true, but you might not need them. Again, they've got
you might not need them. You might not need them.
Yeah. Plus, it's not really aimed at gaming, so I don't know. It's different use cases in it. But
yeah, very much so.
Well, that's the other thing that I noted on just the extra bit that he talked about later was the how games can interact more with your spaces as well. So I know we mentioned that you don't have to track the room by drawing out your space or anything, but games can also start to take advantage of walls and coffee tables and things that you have in your space and make that as part of the game itself. And even apps as well. I saw, for example, you could just pin up an Instagram Reels thing and then start scrolling through on your like kitchen cabinet or something. just little things like that. Like obviously wasn't possible before without the additional mapping technology that's in there.
Conscious of time, is there anything else on the headset specifically?
No, I think we should move on.
Get into. I mean, okay, I guess very quickly summary. Will you be buying one?
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. I'm very tempted. I actually think it looks quite compelling, and it's definitely a step up from the one I currently have. Mm-hmm. The mixed reality stuff has always been more interesting to me than the VR stuff. So yeah, I might look at it. I
would say not for me. While I've got a Pro sat in my house. And while the Vision Pro is kind of looming, I will hedge my bets and wait and see what that looks like.
Okay.
And more, to be honest, I think for this upgrade for me would feel like small enhancements and more of the same.
Yeah.
Whereas the Vision Pro would be something quite different, although I'm still not entirely convinced I can just price. We'll wait and see whether or not at launch it's as impressive as they said it is.
Yeah.
So then they pivoted to AI, which was quite a shift.
Yeah, I was not expecting that.
So they spent a lot of time on it, and I have to say, there was cool stuff in here.
Really cool.
Yeah, so they started with emu, a word that apparently they can't say in the US, because over here I've always heard this emu. Yeah, Rod Hull and emu, for those who are old enough to remember. But emu is their new image generation AI tool, which looks, I guess, to take on Midjourney. It's taking the quoting out of Discord, and you can do it in your Messenger app or in fact, lots of places, which we'll come on to. And the key thing that I took here was that it takes 5 seconds to create an image,
which is fast.
Considerably quicker than some of those other tools.
And it's in a more convenient location as well, right? It's not.
Well, that's it.
In
so
Discord,
it's going to be.
Like
it's going to be in their Meta AI, which we'll touch on in a minute because they kind of do them in funny orders. The thing that tickles me is that they've got this super powerful AI, and I'm not saying this is wrong, by the way. It just tickles me that the application that they mentioned for that first of all was stickers.
Yeah.
You all love stickers. Now you can generate them from your own text. And I was like, okay, well, I feel like there's perhaps more use cases for this tech than stickers, but cool, interesting. And I guess, if it gets people using it, why not? And what they showed was pretty clever. So you would go to your stickers app, you would type in a prompt, and within 5 seconds, you get a selection of stickers that attempt to match your prompt that you can then use and that would be completely unique. Theoretically to you in your chat, which I thought was really cool. I did put it here. Is this the best use of this tech? Question mark. But they said it was coming very soon to all of their apps, so Messenger apps. So I'm assuming that's Messenger, WhatsApp, possibly Instagram DMs. Yeah. And it's just Instagram
there,
videos,
like above the keyboard, like the stickers at the moment.
Just built in. You get to use it.
Bringing the AI to the masses.
And they also then showed AI editing tools for Instagram, which I'm less on board with just because, well, some of it I liked. Some of the stuff where you could restyle a picture. And
the restyling was really cool.
They were really clever. What I wasn't as keen was the example they gave a little later on where they took the grass away from that guy lying on the floor and replaced it with a series of puppies. Now, as far as that picture went, it wasn't the puppies that were the problem. For me, it was the fact that they said something along the lines of, and I should have written the quote down, changing the story or the narrative of your Instagram story. And I thought, well, basically what you mean is just lying. So, lie on the ground on some tarmac outside the office, Photoshop it and put the beach on and go, I'm just enjoying a break in the Bahamas. And you're like, well, you're not. That's a complete lie. So I don't know, is that encouraging the wrong... Yeah, but is it encouraging the wrong kind of behaviour on these platforms? I just felt that felt slightly irresponsible to me, even though I'm sure from a creative point of view, it could be quite cool. I can see that kind of falling into the wrong hands and being used in the wrong way.
Yes. And
we talk about social media, especially for younger people, perpetuating this kind of cycle of, wanting validation and wanting likes and worrying about, popularity ratings or whatever else. I feel like this is kind of just adding fuel to the fire in that. So, and that one didn't really land as well with me. Yeah. Although I did like I like the reimagining. I like the effects. That was clever and funky.
Yeah, like the reimagining of the dog as origami. That was really impressive. The actual turnout of that was really quite incredible. And I can see lots of use cases of that.
Or
for
the
being
picture of
quite artistic.
the man holding a baby later on in the presentation where they switched it for like crochet, or they sort of made him look like a woolly jumper.
Yeah.
But it didn't affect the faces. It only affected their clothes and the kind of imagery around them. So it knew not to mess with the features.
Very clever.
I thought that was quite clever.
Before that, though, actually, before those two announcements, I was actually quite surprised because they mentioned what they're already doing with AI, and it was completely oblivious to this. So before they even mentioned their new stuff, I don't know if you caught, they mentioned a couple of the existing use cases they've got. So they've got Llama as an LLM model that lots of people are using already. Mm-hmm. But they mentioned a few things. They said generate 3D videos from text prompts, generate sound from images, and bring objects into VR by looking at them, and speak a foreign language in your own voice. These were all things that are already existing in Meta's AI kind of tool set. And I had absolutely no idea about that. Even before they announced all their new cool stuff.
Yeah, no, I must admit, I wrote out down here different AI for different things, and they mentioned a whole load of different things. And they mentioned making a platform, didn't they, for creating AIs to help you get things done or just have fun, and to interact with meta universe of products. So
yeah, that's the AI Studio, isn't it?
The Studio, toolkit. They said that they plan to embody them with avatars for interaction within the metaverse, but for now, your interaction with these AIs will be through apps. But I guess that plays back to that holograms comment from right at the start. And then they started with their conversation around the Meta AI, didn't they? The basic assistant.
Yes.
Which is going to be contactable from your Meta messaging tools, again, WhatsApp, etc. It's built on Llama 2. It has access to real-time information, and this was the Microsoft link again, through Bing search, which I thought was interesting because obviously Microsoft's Bing chat is powered by, or at least we believe it's powered by ChatGPT or GPT-4, isn't it? OpenAI's GPT-4. But they're also now allowing the Bing platform, the web search functionality to be accessed by Llama 2. So they're kind of allowing the Bing search engine to be picked up by Llama, and by Meta. So does that now? So did Google not want to be the search platform behind this? Is probably Bing suddenly starting to rise in dominance?
I think that Microsoft are really cornering the AI search market at the moment, which is a bit of a weird thing to do, I guess. But I mean, it might. I suppose they're really trying to increase the popularity of Bing over Google, and Google are really lagging behind with some of their AI stuff, given that they are they're predominantly an AI company, I would say. Well, on top of this, well, I suppose the AI is used for searching as well, so that they're AI through and through, and they seem to be falling behind a lot of the competition on this, which is bizarre. But yeah, I did catch that.
I also thought when they mentioned the image generation piece being in real time and for free through prompting in the apps, messaging apps, I thought, is that available for Midjourney? I think DALL-E, the new version of DALL-E, is it DALL-E 3?
Yeah.
What version
it is, yeah.
Was already touted as a threat to Midjourney because it took image generation out of Discord and put it into an interface that was easier to work with.
Discord's a weird interface.
It is a weird place. There's a number of AI bots that use Discord. It's not particularly user-friendly, I don't think. I think Discord's quite a difficult platform to use. If for what it basically does, it's actually quite hard work sometimes to find your way around. This does put a lot of pressure on Midjourney if the image generation is any good.
Yeah,
they showed some sort of typical fantasy kind of stuff that you see a lot of these platforms do. It'll be interesting to put it to the test. But you put that alongside DALL-E, Midjourney's got its work cut out now, as well as probably dealing with a lot of lawsuits at the moment.
Some of the examples they brought up were really impressive. Like they started with some cartoons, and I was like, oh, okay, you can do like generated computer, almost like CGI images. But then they actually did have some really quite good photorealistic images of people, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting them to kind of start a bit lower benchmark and then work from there. But I do think it's a threat. I do think it's a threat.
The fact that it can be done in less than 5 seconds.
That's wild.
That's the worry for Midjourney and Co, isn't it? Especially with Midjourney, if you want to use it now, as I am, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I might stop that once this stuff comes out, if it's any good. Why would I continue to pay Midjourney when I can do it through the Meta apps for free?
Yeah. The other thing about the Meta AI kind of chat interface that you mentioned as well is the fact that it's bringing it to all your existing apps. You can chat directly with that bot, I think, within say Messenger or WhatsApp. But you can also be in conversation with someone else and then at Meta AI and bring it into the conversation for another prompt, which is also just crazy.
I saw that. I made that note, bring it into group chats too, which I think is really clever. And I think that goes for the stuff that comes next, which was then they started to talk about not just the Meta AI, the kind of generic, all-seeing Meta AI, but then these AIs with personalities, which I started to go. My first reaction was, okay, I guess that makes sense. It's almost like flavoring the AI, isn't it? So it's got all the basic skills of the main AI, but then it's fed a load of extra information and slanted towards particular themes or skills. So they had a chef, they had an editor, they had a travel assistant, they had an MMA coach, and they had a D&D dungeon master, which we'll come on to in a second.
Yeah.
But they were flavoring effectively these AIs with different personalities to make them feel more human, and I guess to humanize that interaction.
Yes.
Then what I thought was really weird was the fact that they then went and attributed celebrities to them, but not celebrities as celebrities, but celebrities as characters.
That's the name, yeah.
Which they explained was because they said these things will make mistakes. Platforms will say stupid things. Very early days. And what they're not doing is saying Paris Hilton or Kendall Jenner is this AI, and therefore everything it says you contribute to them. What it's more saying is it's just giving it a face that you recognize. Something to make it popular. There was a lot of kind of celebrities for me in there, but that's just showing my age, I think. Imagine
though getting a bunch of hate mail from your AI assistant not telling you correct information.
Yeah, but then, well, that's why they've done it, isn't it? But then I thought the best one, which I texted our D&D group about, was Snoop Dogg as your DM, which I thought was great. And they said all of these AIs are going to get voices at some point. That's their plan, but they're not voiced at the moment. They're just it's just almost like a facial animation, isn't it? That
little animated
and kind of moves to give the impression that it's, you're kind of chatting
reacts
with
to your messages and stuff. You know what actually reminded me of it? It's Clippy, but like a high res Clippy.
But it actually reminded me of a tool that was around on the iPhone years and years ago, which was where you could take a picture and then it would recognize the facial features and then try and make that picture into something that kind of moved and looked like a real video. It felt a little bit like that because there were some slightly unnatural movements in the faces. But they showed an example of interacting with Snoop Dogg, didn't they, where they were going on a quest and Snoop Dogg was giving them the instructions. And I thought that was quite funny. Bit novelty. I'm not sure anyone's going to run their D&D game with a Snoop Dogg DM AI, but, it could be quite funny to try.
Why not?
Might be fun for a one-shot.
I wonder if you could just quiz him on mechanics, some like D&D mechanics or anything like that, because even that would be useful.
Theoretically, you should be able to, shouldn't you? So it might becomes like a support for your chat group. Yeah. But like I said, I like the idea. Like right now, it's not that useful. But if you can bring that into, let's say, like a WhatsApp video call, where you actually you run the game virtually through that, and then he's just there.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Or even better, imagine they showed an example where people were putting the headsets on together and getting around a table. You mentioned mixed reality gaming on a worktop. Imagine you all get together and you put on your Quest 3s, and your table then becomes this vast, sprawling environment for your D&D game.
Yeah.
It's dynamically changing, and then all of a sudden Snoop Dogg's at the end of the table doing your DM with you. I mean, that could be really cool. So I think that was really interesting. They also then moved on to Studio, which you touched on a minute ago, which was the platform for building your own, and that's a little bit further away. They said they're going to open up the APIs for integration into their messaging apps in the coming weeks so that developers could start working with it.
The reason they're bringing that later as well, though, I don't know if you caught it, but they were talking a lot about ethics and the responsibility of trying to get it right with the pre-built ones that they've done before putting it in the hands of creators where it could feasibly make a lot of mistakes. They recognized, they were quite open and honest and transparent, I think, about
I thought they were very good actually about the whole way through the AI stuff. But they weren't trying to say we've perfected this and we've nailed it. They were like, here's some really cool stuff we've been doing. We're going to bring it out. It's going to get better, but run with it and give it a try. I thought that was a sort of a good way to approach it.
Definitely.
Because it takes away some of the fear factor, doesn't it, of using these.
Adding to that authenticity of the whole presentation, I think. And not a big evil corporation kind of
they
tech
are
company.
A big evil corporation.
Well, yes, but that's not how it...
There's no video here about Mother Nature. Where was their commitment to carbon neutral? No, I'm joking.
Patting themselves on the back, yeah.
So there was the AI Studio, which obviously was more aimed at developers. They also mentioned a sandbox for non-coders, so that people like me who do not code could also go in and develop their own AIs. That's coming next year. And they also mentioned taking those avatars into the metaverse, as we said, and using them as NPCs in Horizon World games. That was a new stretch. So the idea that actually you could create NPCs for your games
Yeah.
So
Give them
we
personalities.
we talked about this months ago on the show actually, which was someone who'd modded ChatGPT into Skyrim.
Yes.
So you could have these characters that could potentially have infinite conversations with you. This is that next level, isn't it? Imagine your avatars in your games in the VR world that you can literally embody with a particular personality, and it will attempt to act that out. You give it a series of meta prompts, and it behaves in a certain way when you interact with it. That could be
imagine
great.
Doing a D&D game where you could make characters that are just part of your NPC as well, that you could bring around with you and interact with properly, that added to your party, and you could dial up certain traits like competitiveness or aggression and stuff like that, and then they could play really aggressive, or I don't know. It sounds like a really fun way to play it, potentially.
I like the idea of it. I would welcome that. And then the last couple of notes I'd made on the AI stuff were that they were setting them up for businesses to use them, which they didn't really get into. I was making assumptions that, some sort of chat assistant, presumably, or a customer-facing chatbot, potentially. And then building your own AI for creators to engage their communities. So this idea further down the line, this was back to that point you made. They said brand safety is critical. So this is a bit further away. But the idea that you could create we could have a J&A Robbie chatbot.
Yeah,
you could message and interact with that theoretically would respond like we would.
Yeah,
so you'd have Jay's one would be a massive Apple fanboy. Robbie's would pretend not to be an Apple fanboy and talk about other devices he no longer owns. So that's how those bots
got the Apple
work.
Pencil in my hand right now. That I'm fiddling around with in the
background. Does there anything else that particularly caught your eye on the AI stuff? I mean, there was loads in there to unpack, but I'm just mindful of time.
Yeah, no, I did really like the hint on the business side of things. I think was really interesting. Obviously, in our jobs, we're looking at AI as well as every industry is. But if there's an easy way of doing it, if they're going to make tools that are easy to adapt to businesses, I'm thinking, for example, for knowledge purposes, which is affects every business. Finding documents, finding answers to questions that you don't know that perhaps you rely on another department for. All of that stuff could be fed into some kind of model that you could use in a business, as you say, like a chatbot. And if they've got tools to make that easy for businesses, we're in the legal industry. There's no kind of secret behind that, but there's a lot of industry-specific AIs. It'd be interesting having big tech companies that are industry agnostic coming into this space, I think.
Even one that represents your brand, though. I mean, even from a customer's perspective, that brand engagement, it doesn't have to be a creator necessarily that it could embody. It could embody or be a fictional employee of the organization, couldn't it? If you're thinking of bigger corporates. Interesting stuff. I guess onto the smart glasses then. I don't know. Do you want to start that one off?
Or rapidly go through this one, because I didn't have many notes on this. Is this although
I made a lot of notes on this one.
Did you actually? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll start off if you want, because I'll note down the few things that I got, and you can kind of fill in the things that I missed. So the second version of the Rayban smart glasses. The first version, I can't remember when they came out, but I think it was it was quite a long time ago, wasn't it?
I don't think it was that long ago.
I want to say 2021.
I think it was more than that. Yeah, I think a couple of years sounds about right.
Yeah.
It was around the same time that Snapchat were doing their own, weren't they? They did that weird limited run of glasses that you could only get from vending machines and then weird things across the US that would just pop
maybe
up
I don't
at the back of
remember
a truck. And yeah, they were you could only get them through sort of pop-up events that appeared in certain cities, and you had to be there, and there was a limited stock, and it was all a bit weird.
Yeah.
These weren't that, but that was what the Snapchat ones were doing.
Well, the core additional features that I think I've seen in this one, because I mean the original ones had the camera and the you could take photos and videos.
So they had everything apart from the AI. And
everything apart from the AI.
And the live streaming.
But they didn't have all the additional styles. And they didn't have...
That's true.
I think they might have increased the quality of the video as well, potentially.
Yeah, everything's had a bump. What I mean is
there's
the two main new capabilities were AI, which isn't going to be there for a little while, and live streaming.
Yes.
Everything else, I got the impression, had always been there, but had been improved.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So everything on that has been improved, including the quality of the cameras. The sound was also talked about a lot later about the improved sound.
They said they completely reworked the speakers, didn't they? They said so.
Yes, it sounds like a
better quality,
quite immersive surround sound is what it sounds like. Which I don't know. It's induction speakers. So it's I think anyway, it'll be blasting something in your ears, but from above your ear into the almost like bone conduction. I think. So it's supposed to be not perceptible by the people around you, only perceptible by you, even though there's nothing in your ears. Which and they've improved that. I think the stats that they said was twice the
I've told
base.
this before. I've got a pair of Bose sunglasses which are
Oh,
not quite as capable as these. They have built-in audio that, again, much like these, is played into your ears, but it's not in your ears. You can hear it if you get really close and you turn them if you turn them really loud and you get close to the person who's wearing them, they are noticeable.
Interesting.
But if you want them for like background noise, they're great for things like being on the beach with the kids.
Yeah.
Because you can put a bit of relaxing music on, you can be chilling out, and if the kids want to engage you, you're in the moment, you can do the thing with the kids, you can hear everything they're saying, and then you can sit back down again while they go off and do something, and you're back in your music and you're back in your little world or whatever, or you listen to your book. They are quite good. They're not the prettiest or most stylish looking things, but they serve a purpose.
Whereas these are stylish. There's now all these extra styles that I'm bringing up on screen for those watching on YouTube.
But they all look like variations, isn't it? I think there's two, isn't there? Core styles, but there's lots of variations of the two. Is that right?
I think it's three.
Although that one on the right looks, it does look. So
there's the Wayfarer, the classic different. Wayfarer.
That's the one that was. That was the original model, isn't it?
Yes. Then there's the round version, which is more of a circular frame, and then the Meteor at the end, which is almost a combination of the two. It's slightly rounded. I
don't think I'd seen the Meteor. It was the one in the middle they made the fuss about. Yeah, the eccentric cat lady.
Yes,
got really excited about the round glasses. Look how round they are, or something like that. I think she said
they are. Yeah, which we have to just call her out. She was fantastic.
She was fabulous.
She came out with these baggy jeans on that had like a cat kind of, I guess, sewed onto it,
embroidered on. Yeah,
and then she had a cat jumper that had the Rayban glasses on the cat as well. I don't know if you saw. Cat. And she was wearing them on stage as well, and she was super excited. Everything she was announcing, she paused. And the crowd went wild. She was properly amping them up. It was awesome. So yeah, massive props to her.
Yep. So I took a couple of notes. I don't think I captured much that you didn't there. So yeah, next gen Ray-Ban smart glasses, capturing the content through the built-in cameras, which I think is interesting. I think they say it sees what you see, and I agree to a degree. Although if you think about how you move your eyes and how much you move your head tandem with your eyes, don't always go the same way. So. True. It's you'll often look down, but of course your head doesn't move. So I get it. It's a more of a point of view than holding the phone or having it strapped to your body like a GoPro or whatever. But it's still not quite seeing what you see because there's nuances to sort of how you look and where you look versus what the camera will be able to capture. But
true,
still very interesting. Taking calls, listen to podcasts. They mentioned they said that the glasses would start. The Meta AI was coming to the glasses, but not straight away.
Yes,
and they mentioned it was going to start in the US. So that was also uncertain as to when that would be usable outside of the US.
There was also two versions of that, wasn't there? So it was the initial kind of text usage of Meta AI, where you just ask it a question, which Meta AI actually, throughout this whole thing, just makes me think it is just that virtual assistant. It's the Siri and the Alexa competitor.
Yeah, but I think that's interesting you got that perspective, because I got the impression it was more Chat or Chat GPT.
I think it's a mix of both. I think because you can just ask it basic questions, can't you? Which you would have kind of Siri.
As we said last week, and then it's gonna get that very soon anyway, from what we're hearing, and Siri will just be even further behind.
Some of them can do with if you imagine asking Siri to make you a poem or something, it probably could scrape something up. But I wouldn't class it as like anywhere near the other generative AIs. But this does seem like a proper meshing of the assistant AI and the Gen AI stuff. But that's just the text side of things. And then next year, they're hoping to bring out the context of what you're looking at.
Which is, I thought, this is where it got a bit creepy. So I'll be honest, this was the product that interested me the most. That I went away thinking, do I need a pair of smart glasses? I don't need it for live streaming. I don't do that on Instagram or wherever you might live stream. I don't particularly want to take pictures through my glasses when I've got a much more capable phone, although I think it's quite clever. I was more interested in the AI assistant, but then found myself going, well, would I really use it? The multimodal, which I think is how they described it, which is then, as you mentioned, will be a free update next year, which allows the Meta AI to then use the camera to interact with the world around you. And they said things like AI could see what you see and hear what you hear. And I was like, oh,
when you say it like
that sounds really creepy. Yeah, that's exactly how they said it. And I thought, not sure about that. But again, it'd be interesting to see what it could do. Like if you could look at I think they gave an example of translating something.
Yeah, live, like look at
getting information on, like what something might be. That's actually really powerful.
Yeah.
And I was
because that
looking
was
at
the other
these.
example was if you look at a statue or something and say, what is this statue or what is this piece of architecture I'm looking at, and use that as context, which is quite cool.
I like that idea. I don't think I would use the camera features, if I'm honest. Maybe for a little bit of filming randomly, like for a bit of a vlog or something, if the cameras are good enough. But they said they were like 1080p, 12 megapixel ultra wide 1080p video. So, it's going to be all right. It's not going to be amazing. And they gave the spec. It was, I think, the Snapdragon AR1 Gen 1. What's like that? With 32 gig of storage, and the very enthusiastic cat lady made some fuss about how many videos you could capture with that of your cat.
And pause for applause.
Pause for applause. But I think where I could see myself using it, or what got me interested with, as a glasses wearer or intermittent glasses wearer, I quite like the idea of having proper glasses with them rather than the shades.
Yeah,
I'd almost be tempted to get them with my prescription and then use them for the audio capabilities. I quite like the idea of being able to sit and listen to music or have a podcast on, but have my smart glasses doing the thing rather than having to sit with headphones in or look very obviously antisocial.
Yes.
The one thing for me, and it's my problem, not the headset, I've got a big head. And it's medically proven. I think I've told you this before offline, but for the benefit of the podcast, I've had my head measured. It was to my daughter when she was very young, had quite a large head, and we were slightly concerned to make sure that was wrong with her. They measured mum and dad's head, and there's some genuine notes in her files that said the fact that her head was in the 95th percentile was not a concern because dad's head is off the charts, and it's written by a doctor in a medical document. So I've got a big head. One size things don't tend to fit, and sunglasses particularly, and glasses for that matter, but sunglasses have always been a problem. Very few styles of sunglasses suit my large head. So I have to. It takes me quite a lot of trying on to find.
Do you see like the wings of the?
Well, sometimes they're just so narrow that they press in because they're obviously not meant. They don't open widely enough that the frame literally isn't big enough to go to the edges where my head needs to be. So I have to end up going for the quite large glasses anyway.
Yeah.
So I can't just go online and order a pair of these and go, I know what I want. This is my prescription. Send me this pair. Because there's every chance it's going to turn up and look absolutely ridiculous on my big fat head. So I'm hoping, and I don't know whether they're going to do this, I'm hoping there'll be some sort of a store, maybe a Rayban store that you can go into and actually try them on.
Yeah.
And then at least go, okay, that style and frame is going to suit me. I'll go home and order the special transparent blue or whatever it is I want. I'm not sure what I want, but that's kind of that's where I'm at with them. So I actually quite like the idea of them, and I would be very tempted to get some, but it's not the software or the hardware that's the problem for me. Specifically, it's more the look, the fit. Will they go on my big noggin? So that's my issue with them at the moment. But
well, you have to let me know.
I thought they were interesting. I thought they were very interesting. If I can find somewhere to try them on, I'll be tempted to go and have a look.
Yeah, fair enough. What was the price again? I think it was $299 USD. Right?
Starting, it says at $299, and it comes with that's USD, and it comes with a charging case, which I think gave it extra so many hours. Which it was again styled to look like a typical Ray-Ban case, and it would increase the battery life. Again, I guess the beauty of these sort of things, isn't it? You can put them on and use them as glasses all day long, and if they're not charged, they're not charged.
Yeah.
But if you want to use them for the tech side of things, then you've just got to make sure that you charge them up and off you go. So it doesn't impede their primary use.
You find it hard to use it as normal glasses. The normal glasses that people have to wear all day then, because if they run out of batteries, say by lunchtime, then...
Yeah, but they don't stop working in terms of
helping your
eyes.
Then...
It's not like the lenses go, and they just power down and you suddenly can't see anything.
You're not going to take them off to charge them midday, I guess is the point I'm making.
No, that's a good point. But I don't use mine... So I don't need glasses for absolutely everything. But I really only need them recommended for driving and operating a computer, technically speaking. Though I don't really wear them very often. I should wear them. Maybe if they were smart glasses, I might wear them more.
That's a good way to get Jay to wear anything. Just make them smart.
Maybe put some necessary tech in it and I'll wear anything, I genuinely thought it was interesting as a whole.
Yeah, October 17th, that's when they come out. So you'll have to let me know if you do get a pair. Maybe you could bring them on to see what's new that week.
I think if I get some, I'll wear them all the way through every episode, and I'll film an extra perspective for you. You can see what I can see while I'm filming this. It's not as exciting as perhaps my background makes everything look like it should be.
Tripods and lighting,
cables and stuff. But I mean, if I won't be ordering any, this is very clear, unless they're available in a store to try on, then they're not going to happen. But of the 3 topics of conversation, is there anything I want to run out and get now? I would be tempted by the glasses. I'm not interested in the Quest 3.
Yeah.
I am interested in the AI stuff just because I think it would be cool to play around with.
Yeah.
And it would be quite fun because I can do that with you or with other friends as well, and like with my other half, and we can just kind of mess around and try them out. But I won't be building any of them for a while because it doesn't sound like those creator tools are coming till next year anyway. So
yeah,
we'll wait and see how that evolves.
I think I'm the same. I'm really excited about the AI stuff. I can't see me building some anytime soon. I need to think of a use case. But I actually going through some of the ideas that they had, so having like a chef one or a PT one or a designer one, I can imagine like a music theory one, which would be quite good, quite useful for me, that I could just ask questions about, writing songs and stuff like that. So maybe I will. If they don't have one out of the box already, that might be something I'd look at. But
I think if you're trying to learn something, so I think I've mentioned before that, it's a bit slow going at the moment just because of other time commitments, but I do want to learn some coding. I want to get into that world a little bit.
That's probably a good idea as well.
Imagine having a bot that is, it's a developer and you can ask it questions and it's got specific focus and knowledge around development.
Yeah.
That could actually be really useful as kind of like a little assistant coach that just sits alongside your learning, that you can kind of like, I've got this, trying to do code this, why is it not working? This is my code and this is what you should do. And there's your answer.
That's already better than ChatGPT. I don't know if I mentioned, but I the other day just decided it would be quite cool to build a website that would sit on top of some of the API AI tools that I've been messing around with. So like ChatGPT and having like some kind of personal app that I could use, or website I could use. And I just asked ChatGPT to give me some code for a pretty basic site, and I described what the site would be, and it gave me the code. It worked straight away. I just had to customize some of the code after that. Like the HTML was a bit off, but all the JavaScript and stuff behind it worked absolutely fine. And although I'd learned it a long time ago and hadn't touched it since, and because I had the code there that I can mess around with and tweak it, I've mocked up this website in like a day.
I think that's the sort of thing that would be useful for me, because I'm never going to sit there and write this stuff from scratch because my brain just isn't wired that way.
Yeah.
But as having learned it, gone through it, understood the principles, I could probably dissect something in front of me.
Yeah. That's what's even better, I think, about if you had your own AI specifically from Meta that would kind of coach you through it and give you tips and stuff. It would just be added on top.
Presumably as well, if they've got personalities and you're interacting with them, what would be interesting to see is how persistent knowledge of what you asked it in the past could be. Because if it was supposed to be a person, I don't talk to you one week and then talk to you the next and you go, sorry, who are you again? What was that?
Exactly,
Could you reintroduce yourself to me and start this conversation from scratch? You've got a memory, you're building an understanding of me and textualized questions and things that I might say. Would the bot with a personality be able to do the same?
That would be nice, but also super creepy if you think about the kind of personality archetype that it's building for you in the LLM model in the background.
Imagine, I was going to say, but if your Meta's AI can see everything you see and hear everything you hear, then it's already there. Like, it's following you anyway. Imagine though, like, could in if you had AI enabled glasses, if something's happening in front of your eyes, or something happened, the glasses thinks that geographically you were near to. Also, don't forget your phone's tracking your geospace, and the glasses know, but your glasses are connected to your phone, so it knows where you are, what you can see, it can hear what you can hear. Let's say you witness a crime, and they get that from somewhere.
Oh god,
it's not technically recording, but could they?
It depends on the country.
Do we all become CCTV?
Depends on the country, I think, doesn't it? Because some countries allow you to look into that stuff and some countries don't. But that's also super creepy, and existing devices have that same challenge anyway. So I don't think
existing devices. This kind of, to me, minus the screen, was a bit like Google Glass. Some of the controversy around Google Glass. Because if you remember, I don't know whether they've got the Ray-Ban's got this, but Google Glass had to specifically make sure that red light came on, didn't they? To say this is recording. This camera on the side of this dude's head is recording. I don't know if there's a visual indicator on these that says the same thing, because I haven't seen one. Should be from a social perspective.
There is. Yeah, let me bring it up on screen just so you can see it really quick. It looks like there's a white light that appears just above the camera.
I mean, that's not them. I mean,
outside you're not going to see it. If it was red, it might be slightly different. But
interesting.
Anyway,
I'd like to give them a go, just because I think, if nothing else, they're a bit different, aren't they? A bit like when we talked about the smart cameras a couple of weeks ago. Not smart cameras, the action cameras. And we looked at the latest one that we'd picked up. That just trying new tech to capture things that would be quite interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be fun just to have them, try them out. So Meta, if you come across this podcast and you feel like generously sending us a pair, give me the ones that suit big fat heads and send Robbie some normal size ones. But we'd like to try them. I'd like to give them a go. That's the intrigue, I think, is that it's different. It's just something different. Yeah. I'm not sure that I'm that bothered about long-term use or have a particularly strong use case. I just want to try them out.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And from my side, I mean, the last thing I'd say is I am actually quite excited about the Meta Quest 3, and I'm more tempted about that than I have been any other VR headset in a long time. So I might end up getting it.
Well, it would be interesting if you do.
We can get the comparison between that and the
We should get the two together and we should do a comparison episode. And we absolutely should, because I think
100%.
People who've invested in the Pro, rightly, if this Quest 3 is better, and it'd be interesting to put the two side by side and see which is most comfortable, which feels the most powerful. I'm assuming, as I said at the start of the episode, everything is more powerful than the Pro.
Seems like
every level. So, it's presumably got a better processor, it's got a better GPU, better lenses, better screens, better. Be interesting to do that and see how different it is, because it was honestly very noticeable going from a Quest 2 to the Pro and then back to the Quest 2. So presumably this feels similarly jarring.
Yeah.
You go anyway.
Potentially. Right. I think that's everything I wanted to cover on today. Is there anything else you wanted to add on what we got?
No. Done our usual job of going along, haven't we? And there was a lot to unpack, to be fair. It was a very busy event, but some fascinating stuff in there. And I would say I think this was a better Connect than last year's Connect, despite the fact that last year had the Pro headset and some interesting talking points. I think this is a more compelling event from Meta's perspective, and I think it's what they needed after they've had a pretty rough year, to be fair. Because if you think about the highs and lows very quickly, we had the Meta Connect last October, Pro headset announcement, oh my God, VR's going Pro. Then you had the Valve announcement of a competing Pro headset. They both released, they both tanked. Then the PSVR 2 came out, a lot of hype around that then tanked. Then for a few months it was VR's dead. Then the Vision Pro comes out and everyone gets excited again about the possibilities of VR, but suddenly fearful of the cost. And a few months later now, Meta have finally come out and kind of responded and gone, okay, well, we hear you. Here's an all-powerful $500 headset that does all these cool things and more. And oh, by the way, we're doing some crazy shit with AI.
I think it's going to hit the mark.
I think you might be right. My one question, I suppose, and I've seen a lot of this on Twitter, is who are people with the Quest 2 going to upgrade? There's no upgrade path. They're not doing any kind of trade-ins. They've kind of said that already. And there's a lot of people that I would include myself in this, who bought headsets, PSVR 2 example, Quest Pro head example. The original Quest is an example where I've got it, loved it, talked massively enthusiastically about it to a lot of people for a few weeks, and then put it down and forgotten it existed for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Picked it up, dusted it off and gone, I remember how great this was. Played it for a little bit and then put it down and not touched it since.
Yeah.
And I do worry, the Quest 2 was the kind of the device that got into the market, kind of into people's houses that perhaps wouldn't normally have bought them. Are they looking at that dusty headset and going, I fancy another one. I could do it again. I still think that maybe this one will have this is going to have a tougher time, I think, reaching the dizzy heights the Quest 2 achieved, which I think was something like 20 million headsets sold.
Ooh, that's a lot.
It was. I mean, it was outselling the PS5 at one point, which was mainly due to the fact that the PS5 had serious stock issues, and availability issues for the first couple of years. But I'll be interesting to see whether this one gets kind of the similar wave, or whether it's great and it's new on all fronts, but it isn't capturing that same audience. Perhaps that a lot of that audience who found this exciting and interesting have had their fun with it and are like,
yeah.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. But if you do get one, I'd be very excited to have a go.
Yes, yeah, of course, with all new tech. Great.
Shiny.
Well, that's all for this episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. And don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, and subscribe on all good podcasting services as well, so you don't miss an episode. And yeah, we'll see you next time.